in Finland, this is how we do this. This is a different type of sauna. This is one that's by the lake. This is, sauna talk, basically. But she was doing one where it was like more or less a hot tub. But it's funny how because her English isn't great. So she says, this is kind of like a meat soup.
I know one guy from Finland who gets really annoyed at Finnish online content because it's all just like the accents which no one there actually speaks with when they speak English, perkele. And he gets really annoyed by it because he's got a slight Finnish accent. You can tell he's not native, but it's just every now and again he'll say a certain word and it will come out just much more Finnish than expected.
I think I've noticed that with most Scandinavian people who speak English, their English is so incredibly precise.
Yeah, their level is extremely good. In defense of all the Finns out there, by the way, Finns aren't Scandinavian.
Sweden, Norway, and Denmark.
Yeah, they have to be Scandinavian. That's Scandinavia truly. Iceland, I think, is in the Nordic family with Finland as well. So that's all five. And then Scandinavian, I think, is just the three. But anyway, so the big five, yeah, it's the big five, including Greenland and Iceland, sorry. They are Nordics, and then Scandinavian is, as Banana said, really just those three. It's that tight little bundle.
Iceland talk.
Is Iceland real?
Before we begin, the Gamer's Advocate would like to remind you that any episode could contain game spoilers, so watch or listen with discretion. And now your hosts, AMKomnenos, Banana, and Legion. Enjoy the show.
Right, get back to it. Come on, we're doing podcasts.
Well, do you want to do the intro this time, Com?
No.
No? Okay. Well, welcome on in to part 2.
Well, I'm doing it now.
Oh, well, now you do. Okay, go ahead.
I just like that the consideration there was oh, Com, do you want to do the intro? Because we're sure as shit not letting Banana do it.
Actually, no, let Banana. Bookends.
Yeah, bookends.
Let's set up a bookend. I like, by the way, how Banana's going to introduce the podcast and then invite themselves to say their favorite game.
I assume there will be some break between the intro.
Legion, don't break it up. No banter. Zero. Okay? Fucking silent.
You two are just going to sit in silence while I'm just say something. Say anything at all. Well, welcome back to another episode of the Gamer's Advocate podcast. We'll be continuing our discussion of our top games. So we are, as always, joined with AMKomnenos, Legiongrey, and myself, BananaHammockRepublic. We are continuing our discussion from a previous episode where we just rambled on way too long, digging into our favorite games across all platforms and genres. So we're going to get back into that discussion. If you missed the original episode, feel free to look back and disagree with all of our choices. But we're going to tackle some new entries today.
And maybe because we left off last time with Legion, maybe we should just continue the circle and crack on with Banana.
The only thing I was going to add was that we were saying top 5, but since we're doing an episode 2, we'll just kind of see where that takes us. Sure.
Yeah. I think even in that intro, as I was discussing it, I was like, we started with top 5. Let's just say top whatever the fuck we get to.
Our top games.
Things I had organized in my head and not written down because I'm stupid. Borderlands 2. I think within the Borderlands series, Borderlands 2 is a standout as my top game within that collection. The games all have something to appreciate. Borderlands 1 definitely set the stage and really established a series that was worth continuing. Borderlands 2 just really delivered on continuing that series. And then you get into the pre-sequel in Borderlands 3, and I think they're great games. They just don't have whatever it is that Borderlands 2 did that made it really stick with me. I think Borderlands 2, with the characters that were introduced in that episode, with the continuations of the stories from the characters from the previous, with the establishment of the villain and the gameplay loop that you really experience in all of the Borderlands games, it just really felt like a very polished collection of everything you want from a Borderlands game. and it has what might be my favorite DLC of all time in Tiny Tina's Assault on Dragon's Keep. So I think for me, Borderlands 2 stands out as the essential experience for Borderlands, and it's just one of my favorite kind of shooter RPGs across any platform.
I remember it being an incredibly playable game, which I know sounds like a very stupid thing, but it's just so much fun to dive into. Like,
it's an easily overlooked thing. So
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely. I mean, not every game has that. And I remember playing it with a friend of mine. We were doing a very small online campaign. One of the first online games I ever played in co-op, actually. So I did a few couch co-ops, Gears of War, Halo, and things like that. Borderlands 2, I remember doing an online co-op with a friend. And I think my mum at one point walked in the room, and she was just like having a look on the screen. And then at some point, she gave it a try. My mum hasn't played a game since Sonic on the Mega Drive or Genesis, and she gave it a go. And she didn't like play for long or anything. Controls, especially, I think, in the world now, they've moved on so much from just the simple move right or left on screen by banana. They've changed so much that it was a bit complicated to get used to. But she was able to give it a go and just shoot some things and have a bit of fun. And not many games are really that welcoming and just that playable that someone who hasn't played games before can give them a try. So I'll always be thankful to it for that. Yeah, it's a very, very playable, very, very fun game.
Yeah, I got Borderlands for my kids because they had an Xbox. They had one of those Halo Xbox one, whatever the package was, and I got them Borderlands. And I remember thinking like the cell shading on it was so unique, and I thought, wow, is this? I know there's a game here, but it almost looks like a comic book, in its presentation, and that's what got me at first. And they played it, so I never really touched it myself. But it's definitely the type of game, especially when you play it co-op, that it really kind of lends itself to to that kind of experience where it's like, I remember this because of this situation or that situation, and it's not just the story that carries it along, although it has that with it. So it's a pretty engaging game for sure. But Banana turned into Dark Banana there for a second.
Yeah,
and now it's turned into kind of Hot Banana. Yeah. What the hell's happened?
I was looking at my camera feed, and now that it's not dark outside, I have some natural light coming in, and my initial thought was like, oh, I just washed out like crazy, so like I'll just do some balancing, adjust my light, and my little ring light has 5 buttons on the controls that are all in a straight line. And I can never remember like what orientation I'm holding the and where those buttons belong. So one of the ones I hit was the power button.
If you have enjoyed this segment of the podcast, please don't forget to put #SexAppealBanana in the comments.
Yeah. Let's not put sexy banana anywhere.
Please
nobody
do.
Needs that.
Please.
A ripe banana. Yeah.
Oh, that's good. See you on Blue Sky. Then I guess I'm going to jump in with my next one. And it's following a very similar feel to my Dark Souls approach, which is the peak that I think someone has done. So it's going to be within a series, what was the very, very high point of that series? And I was tied here between 2 choices. The first choice was Death Stranding, but I can't not do Metal Gear Solid 2, which I think is the single greatest work Hideo Kojima has ever made. And honestly, if any one of these games was actually going to end up being my ultimate video game, it would probably be Metal Gear Solid 2, just ever so slightly above the others. But that's very much why I didn't do it first. I didn't want that to be concretely confirmed as my favorite. That game to come out when it did, to be as groundbreaking as it was, I don't think there's ever been anything quite like it. Every now and again, in video gaming, you get these games which are really epochal. These games that define an entire era and actually genuinely push forward in some way, whether it be controls, whether it be cinematography. I'm thinking of Halo for controls, that's a big one. Art styles, that's big. Max Payne in particular, I remember that being very much epochal at the time, as odd as that is to think of now. I feel Metal Gear Solid 2 was just era-defining and era-expanding in so many ways. And it's an ultimately still relevant game to this day. So, always through the slight caveat of it's not a modern game, so we're going to have some caveats for how well it controls. I think it controls about as well as any game from that era has done. I think the setting is incredibly interesting. The division of the game into two parts, the tanker section at the very beginning, followed by the plant section afterwards. The boldness to cast aside Solid Snake as a major protagonist, and even to give us a little snippet of that Solid Snake fun at the very start of the game, gives it boldness. I think boldness is something that we always need to consider when we talk about greatest games, because that's what makes art interesting. It's the boldness behind it. It's very easy to do the simple fit, but to go and do something so different, which is why I love Death Stranding so much, I think just makes something more worthy of consideration. And the fact that its message politically is still not only incredibly relevant in the 21st century, but was really, I can't quite find the right word, precocious. It was something that noticed ahead of its time the modern development of our society. It's unreal. It's unreal. So for me, no matter what Hideo Kojima does, I don't know if he's ever going to be able to top a work that he did back in the early 2000s. So one of my very top games of all time, Metal Gear Solid 2.
Yeah, Death Stranding could be up there, but as he said, that it was too good, so he had to, tone it down a little
Did you
bit.
read that recently about Death Stranding 2? The playtesters liked it too much, so he decides, no, we can't have that.
Stop, please.
Such a king. That's my boy. The feeling that you get in some modern games, the idea that Larian is very famous for this. If you have an idea, you can probably do it. It might not always be exactly what you intended to do, but you can probably give it a try and something's going to happen. I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is one of the early examples of that, and Kojima games generally are a very early example of that. If you can think of doing something, you probably can.
Yeah, what's great about the creative process is that sometimes you have an idea that you want to see incorporated into your project, but along the way, you realize, actually, this works because we are doing this other thing, or you start putting together other things, and as a whole, it becomes a bigger thing than what you originally intended. So yes, your original concept is there, but you discover things along the way, and especially like certain mechanics like you have in Metal Gear Solid 2 that are there, and you would think that doesn't work on its own, but it works because of the scene. And so those type of things that if you don't take that risk to say, what if we couldn't try to make you do this? Along the way, you start incorporating certain things, and maybe you have to create mechanics in order to make that happen. Metal Gear Solid 2 is almost like classic example of discovery process and integrating the mechanics of a game that are truly unique. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. I just think of peculiar little moments as well, which would be massively frustrating, except for the fact that they're so well integrated into the game and with such a sense of humor to go along with it. Things like if you're sprinting across the one area and your character steps in bird shit, then you're going to fall. That's so annoying when you think about it. But combine that with the fact that you can look up in the same area and your character's going to get his face crapped on by a bird. Like just these weird little details that the game doesn't need make it just a joy to play. Because as well, when you do things like that, you start thinking, oh, what else is in the game? What other weird things can I do? What other peculiarities can I play with? And what's going to happen? And like Larian games, I think it continues to not disappoint. That tone is maintained throughout the game to where if you have a weird little idea, try it. As much as I love Final Fantasy VII Rebirth, if I've got a weird idea, I can't do it. I almost certainly can't. I'm walking through this one area doing this one thing. Metal Gear Solid 2 has that sandboxy feel.
Yeah, definitely my best video that I did for Baldur's Gate 3 had to do with just drinking those Hag's potions.
Yeah.
And I thought, surely there's videos of this. And I found one other, and it didn't have a whole lot of views, but I said, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it my style. And it just really took off. But here's the thing. All the comments were like, I'm going to use that now to poison the goblins. I'm going to use this in this situation. I'm like, Larry didn't think about that because you can't use it for those things. So it's funny that and that can also get you into trouble, is that, you can think, wow, it does this game lets me do this, and all these other scenarios. Why can't I do it for this one? It really seems like it would work. Nope.
Yeah, I think Larian was going to run into that issue regardless, because they're building a game that's adopted from a D&D platform. And I mean, with the popularity of those D&D campaigns being like YouTube series now, we've seen so many times where the DM is like, here's this new item. I have an idea of how my team is going to use this item. And then somebody's like, no, I'm going to do something you'd never considered, and you have to figure out how to implement that. Why? That's what Baldur's Gate 3 is. It's a lot of those situations where you find people who come up with a unique solution that the developers didn't implement because one person in a million had that idea.
So I think the interesting thing about that is that it shows a certain kind of video game development, which I think Baldur's Gate 3 is very system-based led, which is fantastic, because if you establish the systems and the rules within which the game has to run, all of a sudden you can grant the player freedom and agency, because they're stuck within those rules anyway, but you can see how much they can push them and bend them and what weird things they can do, which is an amazing design achievement. And I think the interesting thing here, pulling it into Metal Gear Solid 2, is they didn't do that. Metal Gear Solid 2 is not a systems-based game like that. It's just got hundreds of weird little scripted events essentially that take place, probably due to system limitations at the time. Metal Gear Solid 5 becomes closer to being system-based, but even then it's not the same. Whereas Metal Gear Solid 2, it's just, there's not, okay, we're going to put birds in this world and give them digestive systems and then see what happens as the physics engine does this. This is just, no, we're going to put bird crap on the floor, and if the player runs through it, they're going to slip. And if they look up whilst in this area, they're going to get their face crapped on. And if they find themselves looking down at this picture of this scantily clad woman in this locker, they're going to get a radio call asking them why they're being weird. Like, all these things are so scripted, which it's not a greater achievement by any stretch, because the greater achievement is certainly the system-based game. But for what they were doing at the time, I think it really just shows the attention to detail in the game and the love that they had, that they were willing to put all of those weird little moments in, which, similar to what Legion was saying about Cyberpunk earlier, which we could say about Elden Ring, they don't really care if you don't see it. They don't care if you don't run through the bird crap. They don't care if you don't look at that picture weirdly. But it is there if you want to.
Yeah, and I think for me, Metal Gear Solid 2 is kind of that perfect balance that you see in the Metal Gear series, where there's always that bit of levity, that bit of silliness in Metal Gear games, but Metal Gear Solid 2 is where you balance what is a serious political analysis being presented to you through the lens of this game with that levity and silliness, and it's not so far into the inane that you're like, all right, which version of not Solid Snake is this person? And why are they having this conversation with another not Solid Snake, and what the fuck is the point of this? It's not so far into that inane weird story that Metal Gear gets that it like undermines the serious themes that are being presented, but it's also not so dour and miserable that the only thing that you're being presented is that serious analysis. There's those moments of levity, there's silliness built into the game that you're engaged with, so you continue a serious story with fun. They're perfectly balanced in Metal Gear Solid 2, and the other entries in that game have different levels of that balance, but I think Metal Gear Solid 2 is where that pinnacle is.
Kojima has this, with that same thing when we're talking about that and situation, like what Larian does and doesn't incorporate it. He pulls the rug on me sometimes from time to time. And so it's like, is there a deeper thing here? Is there something I'm missing? I see this, does that mean this? Sometimes a guy named Dallas is just because he's from Dallas. The lady is named Carolina because she's from Carolina. It's that simple.
The guy who won't seem to die in Death Stranding, whose name is Die Hard Man. Like sometimes it's not too deep.
Yeah. Doom Guy. You got it from that, maybe. Just call me Doom Guy. I guess for me, the next one would be God of War 3. I was going to say the original God of War, and it's so hard for me to pick between the first three and the reboots, the whatever. They're all so good. They're just incredible. 2 is probably God of War 2. The original one is probably the last on that list. Not because it's bad, but just from the tier system. But I think overall, God of War 3 really, just like Mass Effect 3, puts a lot of stuff together that really worked well and said, this is the engine, this is the system, this is the story. We're finally putting it all together. And God of War 3 is just phenomenal. The original God of War took a lot of inspiration from the Clash of the Titans movie. I think it's from 85. Maybe earlier than that, maybe 80. But I love that whole stop motion thing. I watched that so much when I was a kid. So when I saw God of War originally, I was like, something felt natural to me with that. And that's apparently where they got a lot of their inspiration. That in the Capcom's Onimusha. And then there was some glitches that were in Devil May Cry. Enemies that would sustain them in the air. Those were glitches, but they said, hey, that's kind of cool. So they kind of incorporated that into the original God of War. So a lot of these things that I saw from other places were all in God of War. And I was like, there's got to be a reason why I like this game. So you don't know this, of course, but that's where it all came together. But then God of War 3 really fleshes that out. It has a tight story, has a lot of things. It's this really, really epic adventure that really feels complete and concise, and it's definitely, they captured the spirit in the reboots for sure, and they definitely went their own way with a different story for that, which is good. But the original God of War 3, pretty powerful.
Yeah, I think that original series of God of War games was excellent, and I think I only ever got to play each of them once, so they kind of blend together for me because it's been a while. But I think it was interesting because when we were talking in the previous recording of our favorite games or our top games, we mentioned QuickTime events. And when you brought up the king of QuickTime events, I was thinking, well, God of War is somewhere near the top of that list. But God of War always presented them as kind of like an end cap to a boss fight or a phase of a boss fight, so you knew when they were coming up. And that's exactly how QuickTime events should be, in my opinion. You should know when you're going to be faced with them. I will say it did feel a little excessive in God of War in the early games, the amount of QuickTime events, because it was, like every boss fight, and then occasionally as you're navigating through the area, you trigger something and it would be like, all right, now mash circle in order to progress. And I think it got a little overused, but I think they kind of recognized that as they progressed, and it became less ubiquitous. It wasn't so dominant in the gameplay experience, but it was a neat little. It was kind of the way cutscenes were previously used. It was almost like a celebration of a little in-game accomplishment to give you a unique sequence that you wouldn't be able to implement in the natural engine of the gameplay. It was, we're going to deviate from the system we've built that you're familiar with and give you a little extra, a little bonus because you just finished off this boss, or you've just done something incredible. So now you get a unique animation that is only shown this one time.
Yeah, I remember Dark Souls. God of War 3 was the first God of War game I ever played. I might have briefly tried God of War Remake before trying God of War 3, and it's the only one that I finished. So I've tried God of War 2 now, I've tried God of War Remake, of Reboot, and I've played God of War 3, and God of War 3 is the tightest experience that I played in God of War games. It's incredibly satisfying to play. Almost every moment that you play in the game feels really, really good. The only thing I didn't like, and then I grew to love, was the lack of heft that the weapons have. So this was after, it must have been after trying God of War Reboot. Every hit with that axe feels amazing. Every single one, and throwing it and that whoop, when you catch it, nothing like it. God of War 3 doesn't have that, you're just sort of spinning through enemies. But when I began to feel it more as this almost bullet hell type of game where you're just surrounded by enemies and you're chopping through them at will, I learned to love that. And that lack of impact suddenly just became a reflection of how powerful Kratos was and how much you could just have fun with the combat. And it's a weird word to use for a game where the QuickTime event is ripping Helios's face off so that you can use his head as a lamp. But it's very, very innocent gaming fun, in the same way that something like Borderlands is. It's shockingly playable to this day. When I say I played it eventually, by the way. This was in like 2022. So it was very, very late in the world of gaming. This was way past its sell-by date. And it held up surprisingly well.
Yeah. So, you know, as if you have played the original ones and then you go on to play the reboot, you have a little bit deeper appreciation. It's not required. But as Com said, you know, you have the axe and it has a certain feel to it. It has a very different presentation. Obviously, you're over the shoulder. But it's a different story they're trying to tell. They're trying to tell Kratos from transitioning from one person to a different type of person. And then when he has to go back, he's revisiting the old Kratos. And that put chills on and I don't get that from games, but that put chills on my arms. I was like, here we go. Old Kratos.
It's amazing when a game gives you that, isn't it? And this is a very special kind of game, right? You need nostalgia to have that moment. I think the biggest one for me, I don't know if Banana had it as much as I did, but it was a full fucking tingle. Hair standing up. Was playing Final Fantasy VII Remake, fighting Genova towards the end, and in the third phase, the original Genova theme comes in, which it hadn't done until that point, and it's got the really hefty boom, boom, boom drums leading in. I had that same feeling of that, oh my God, we're back, oh my days, and just everything, even now thinking about it, I'm reacting. So this is actually partially why I wanted to go back and do God of War reboot now. Is I won't have quite that same experience. You know, I don't have all 3 games behind me and I haven't got years of legacy behind it. But I want to feel that transition to the moment when you fight with the chains instead of the axes.
Yeah, because I got a PSP specifically for God of War on PSP, which was a different game, its own game.
I got a friend who bought a PSP or Vita specifically for the Uncharted title that came out on it.
Yeah.
I mocked him for a long time. Idiot.
I guess the next one, as far as like my top games, Pokemon Black. So I think across the Pokemon series, and there's so many games at this point, the first 3 generations, they were still figuring things out. And people who've looked into like the mechanics of how those generations work will recognize there were some fundamental flaws in just the behind the scenes stuff in the games. It didn't have a huge impact on the single player experience because you could just build an overpowered team and you wouldn't notice it. But when you started to think in terms of like what is an optimized team and then look at the way the game is built, the mechanics just weren't there. They messed some things up, and it felt like they were messing some things up because the way they described certain abilities didn't match the way that they were in. And it wasn't until Generation 4 that they actually polished that and made things make a lot more sense. And then in Gen 5, when you get to Pokemon Black, everything just feels the way it's supposed to be. It feels like we finally figured it out. And I mean, they introduced new Pokemon with pretty much every generation. I like the additions in Pokemon Black. I like the story of Pokemon Black. I think it's, I mean, I should also include Pokemon White. They're the same game, just from two different points of view. I don't know why. I like Black. It just it works for me. But it is, for me, it just feels like that's where they finally figured out everything with Pokemon. And then from there, it started to go back downhill, and we started to kind of lose track of what the games were supposed to be.
I've got nothing to add. I'm so sorry.
I do feel like this was a bold choice to share with this team. I feel like you might not be the Pokemon fan base.
Yeah. So how do you feel about Power World?
Yeah. I did tell you once that people in my chat were simultaneously talking about food and Pokemon, and I thought that Pidgeotto was a type of pasta that I didn't know about.
It's delicious.
Just because I've got nothing to add on to that, I'll jump in with the next one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Truck Simulator, specifically American Truck Simulator. Simulation games are not really a genre that I'm a huge fan of, with some exceptions. So Football Manager, which became very, very close to being on this list. I think the only reason it didn't is because it's been so long since I've played it that it doesn't have the affection and the pull on my heart that it would once have done. But simulation games, I think you've really got two relationships with simulation games, right? You've either got the no interest, don't care, or the this is my life now, this is just what I do. American Truck Simulator is this is my life now, this is what I do kind of video game. And a lot of simulation games, I think they give you curiosity. So we've talked about Flight Simulator before, and the reason I think that we all get into Flight Simulator, if we do, is because we know we're probably never going to be a pilot. And then we have something like Power Wash Simulator, and the reason that we like it actually isn't the same, because we can go and Power Wash. So they gamify it a little bit and make it feel a bit different. Truck Simulator, I don't know where it lies there, because I guess it's relatively easy to become a trucker. If you really wanted to, it's relatively easy to go on a road trip if you wanted to. But they've combined something very, very special with the myth and legend of the American road trip, with the simulation aspect of you are actually having to forge this career as a trucker, with the integration with the online world, with things like online radio stations which exist specifically for this, that they just managed to create out of a few relatively simple ingredients, because it's not that interesting. The AI is not that good. The cars on the road, the other ones, they do what the hell they want. The roads are really streamlined. I mean, if in real life a road has 50 off-ramps, this has probably got 4, you know? But they did something by combining a lot of much, much smaller parts into an incredibly cohesive whole package that has an idealism attached to it that makes it into a very, very special game. So American Truck Simulator, and now that's been in my heart for about 5 years, and it's not going anywhere.
Yeah, the amount of cultures and scenery that you'll get going from the east to the west is amazing. I mean, I've been all over the United States, and I have my favorites for sure, but I mean, it's so unique every single state. Just is.
Beaver Forge.
Yeah.
Was it Pigeon Forge?
Pigeon Forge. Yeah.
Oh shit!
Cobb forgot his favorite American city.
Home of Dollyland. Yeah, Beaver Forge, Dollyland.
He's got beaver on the brain. But
Yeah, I think.
Don't cut that out. You leave that.
I think those truck simulator games are definitely, they fall into that category we talked about with simulator games, where when somebody just tells you like, oh, I've been playing American Truck Sim, you're like, why?
Yeah.
What is wrong with you? Why would anybody want to play that game? And then you give it a try yourself. You're finally like, I need to see what all the hype is about. And it just feels good.
Yes.
It's just fun. It's just playable. And it's really difficult to put into words why. But when you have that experience, you're like, I get it now. I think, yeah, that's...
You know,
specifically Truck Sim is probably the best example of that.
Do you know the incredibly abstract idea when you're rating food of mouthfeel? Which is so unique to each person as well, that just how does this feel? The mouthfeel, if you will, of Truck Simulator is what makes it. It's not anything in particular, it's just something in the soul. It's something in the feelings of it. And it doesn't apply to European Truck Simulator, which is really good. It's really good. And there is fun to that. You know, it's really fun, like crossing over into another country and having the different language pop up. It's really fun taking the ferry across from, it's probably Calais, I guess, to go to the UK. And now all of a sudden you've got to learn to drive on the other side of the road for a while. That's really interesting. Something isn't right. Because truck trips are supposed to be in the USA. They just are. They just are. I don't know why. Yeah. And it's one of the things, it's really hard to put your finger on, but the mouthfeel is just right.
I was going to say, I definitely think there's something to the idea that in American Truck Simulator, you can drive for 3 hours and not have left the state. Whereas in European Truck Simulator, you can drive through 3 hours and you've gone through 15 countries.
They very deliberately, shortly after the release of American Truck Simulator, it was when they'd done the initial version, which I think was just California and Nevada, maybe? It was just 2 or 3 states. They re-released it and scaled everything up because the complaint was, hold on, I don't want to drive for 20 minutes and leave California. If I'm starting in San Diego, for example, and then heading all the way up, I don't want to be leaving it in that time. I want to be barely at LA in that time. And yeah, that scaling up is a big thing. And you're entirely right. Just that sense of adventure that you get when you can do an entire mission and not leave Oregon, but you've been driving for an hour. It just hits different.
Yeah, because I know...
I don't have the Texas DLC yet, but when I do, oh, baby.
Yeah, in Texas alone, I mean, really, within Texas, of course, this is pretty well known, but it's divided into probably 5 distinct geographical areas. You know, you have East Texas, where some of us are at. you have the coastal area, but that's kind of considered like the southeast, which doesn't really always include Austin, even though it's not that far away. That's hill country. And then you have West Texas, but then you have 2 types of West Texas. You have West Texas that's in the Panhandle, and you have West Texas over by Big Bend. So that's what I'm saying is that they're very unique, each geographical region too.
You said hill country, and since then your accent really thickened.
Can't help it.
I mean, that's what happens when you talk about hill country. That's just how it works.
Hill country is actually very...
I'm saying it. It's making it worse.
It's actually heavily influenced by the German area. There's a lot of German in hill country. It bleeds into Houston area because like they have kolaches and there's some Polish influence there too. A lot of Polish stuff. But in hill country, there's a lot of German, Polish influence. Yeah, be surprised.
I could just see Com trying to resist laughing every time you say the words hill country.
Why did he say it so many times?
It's just that's what it's called. It's Austin.
But you said it so often. By that point, you could have replaced it just with the word there, and I would have known.
Because you got New Braunfels and you got Austin. You got that whole area.
If this was your favorite part of the podcast, please feel free to tell us in the comments below.
Yeah.
Hashtag hill country.
Again, Com's favorite series, Baldur's Gate. So Baldur's Gate 2 is got to be my favorite game of all time. And Baldur's Gate 2 just does a lot what Baldur's Gate 1 couldn't do at its time. And the thing is that it's actually had some amended rules because back in the day, Wizards of the Coast kind of wanted an integration into Rule Set 3, which didn't fit the math and the engine that they created for Baldur's Gate originally. And so it's more or less this 2.5. So it's kind of this hybrid type system. And it still works. It works just great. The story is so amazing. It is incredible. Throwing a ball is not really seen. Because you have to get to that point, to be honest. Baldur's Gate 2 is so long, but throwing a ball really picks up where that one left off. So if there is a Baldur's Gate 3, it was supposed to be throwing a ball, but BioWare had no intention of actually really doing a 3, but they did want it to finish. And so when they had the opportunity, they took it and they just created a DLC for it. So it's kind of like, just like 2.5, it's kind of a marriage of situations. So they basically created an engine and the throwing a ball in more or less a haphazard way, but still created a masterpiece in the process. But yeah, Baldur's Gate 2, man. Except for the Irenicus dungeon, the rest is just an absolute perfect specimen of a game. It's perfect.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked about Baldur's Gate a lot on the channel, so I don't know that I need to say a great deal. But I loved Baldur's Gate 2. I feel like the story that BioWare told with the Baldur's Gate games is the highlight of those games. And everything else feels like a step down, but it's not such a significant step down from an excellent story that it really suffers. So I think for a lot of people trying to go back to those games, they want to experience that story, but things feel a bit dated and the gameplay feels a little confusing because it's not tremendously well explained. And those games were difficult. They were challenging in the ways that you had to strategize in combat. So my only real criticism of the original first 2 Baldur's Gate games is that I feel like they would have benefited from kind of the Baldur's Gate 3 combat model, where it is deliberately turn-based. And you can work around that in the old ones with the auto pause for specific events and all of that, and manually pausing to kind of create your own turn-based systems. But yeah, I think if you can overcome that challenge of learning the very specific gameplay that was presented in Baldur's Gate 1 and 2, they're just worth it in every way. The story is incredible. All of the little side quests feel like complete mini stories. Your companions have their own stories that are worth looking into. And everything just feels kind of real. Like there's enough depth in all of the non-main story content that it feels like it belongs. It feels like it's a full real world that you're having an adventure in, rather than the world was created for the adventure that you're having.
I've got nothing to add. BG2 is really good.
Well, we did 3 in the first episode, so we might as well just tack on a third one for this one.
Sounds good.
What do you got, Banana?
Okay. So for me, Frostpunk. I think Frostpunk is one of those very, very effective real-time strategy games. It's real-time is ambiguous. You can kind of adjust the way time flows in that game, but it is very much a resource management simulator, and it has a lot of the mechanics of those real-time simulations like StarCraft and Age of Empires and Warcraft. But it's weirdly not PvP, which seems like it shouldn't work. And the developers of Frostpunk were like, no, you're fighting against the environment. You're fighting against circumstance. Your opponent in this situation is way more capable than it was in StarCraft and Age of Empires, because it is inevitability. It is the forces of nature that you have to deal with. And that game did a really good job of kind of presenting real challenges in that environment, and things that you had to overcome, and difficult decisions that you had to make as a leader in order to survive. And it made it for a very effective kind of storytelling, say, like, you cared about doing a good job in that game. Making a player care is a really, really big deal for a game. And I think Frostpunk did a really great job with that.
Yeah, I think the idea of battling against an enemy that you don't actually fight is a really intriguing mechanic. Because you can also see how this leads into players like me who slipped out of it from a sense of frustration and not having that opponent who I could run down, that opponent whose mechanics I could learn and tactics I could learn, rather just the feeling of constantly delaying losing, which is what I felt when I was playing Frostpunk. To me, it's just frustrated. But if you can get into that kind of mechanic, it's incredibly unique. It's an incredible tool for storytelling. It really is. And I thought they really built well into the game the event system, with things like, what do we do with the children? Put them in the mine, that's what you do with them. The idea of having these small little modifiers constantly being built, and the expedition system, which I think was, that was Frostpunk, where you could send people out to go and, deal with these small things, meant that there was always this intrigue pushing you through the game of, it's almost like the Civ one more turn idea. You send an expedition out, they spend however many minutes in real life going and solving this thing. So you think, I just want to wait and see what happens when they get back. But then whatever they come back with normally had some intrigue attached to it that made you want to say, we'll just do one more. Just one more. Send him out. And it's the kind of game where despite lacking a sense of joy, you can spend an immense amount of time just stuck in that world and truly, and this is the rare one, truly immersed in the story that you're telling.
You sent off the hunters and a bunch of other things. You have to wait for those things to come back. You have to kind of time in advance. There's a lot of calculation that goes on, not just at the current turn, but what am I doing 3 turns from now or something. But yeah, you sent off the expedition. You name one of them Gustav. Now we know where Claire gets its inspiration from. Frostpunk.
I do think you also highlighted something that Frostpunk does, and it gets into that kind of discussion we've had with role-playing games and your decisions mattering. Frostpunk immerses you to the point where you can't always look at a decision pragmatically. So when you're faced with that decision, what do you do with the children? I can boost production by putting them in the mines. But I've just put children in the mines. And the way Frostpunk works, somebody's going to die. And if I am immersed enough in that game, I have to acknowledge that I just made the decision to send children to their deaths.
Into the mines.
It also has a reflex system where the people react to those decisions too.
Yeah.
So it's not just you're doing that and you have to live with your own morality.
There's also a real game mechanic that drives consequences for those decisions, but that also contributes to the immersion, because while you're dealing with that guilt, you are being judged by other people for the decision you made. So I think that's those role-playing mechanics that people complain about a lot in games, or like, I didn't feel like my decisions mattered. And ultimately, we've had this discussion that in certain cases, the reason your decision matters is because you care and not because it had to matter in gameplay. Frostpunk balances those two and brings them both together. It matters in gameplay. It also matters in your immersion, because you're supposed to reach that point where you feel like you're making decisions with real lives at stake.
If you can't tell already, Banana is very tactic-centric on a lot of his favorite games.
I am decent at strategy and bad at skill, so it's where all of my gameplay preferences lie.
And yet he's played the Souls games, so
Yeah.
Begrudgingly. Well, then allow me to lead us down a very different path for my 6th game. So I was looking for a genre that was not represented in the games I've mentioned so far, which tend to be not of one particular genre, but they're certainly mostly single player as what they're known for. So I decided to think about games that matter in a different way. So I ended up looking for the greatest party game of all time. And that's just the word party game pulled me away from Fall Guys, which I was going to say. No, the greatest party game, and I think the greatest multiplayer game of all time, is Mario Kart. And specifically, I'm going to go with Mario Kart 8, the most playable of the Mario Karts. Mario Kart 8, why specifically Mario Kart 8? The polish, the presentation, ultimately. I think almost any Mario Kart game you can play and you can have a great time doing it. You have this common sense of structure all through them, where really as soon as you get away from the very, very earliest iterations, we're looking at similar games. But the presentation of 8 is incredible. Add to that 96 courses. That's amazing. 96. You can sit there for goodness how many hours and never see the same damn course again. And I believe you can mirror all of them as well. So you always just have this sense of variety playing through the game. Joy. I think that game is probably the most joyous game, even when it goes wrong. Even when you've been in front for the entire race and you get blue shelled. There's a certain sense of joy to it as everyone else zips past you, for them at least. So it's just got a real sense of fun to it, but the main thing that makes it the great party game that a game like Fall Guys couldn't even ever be is Fall Guys, you just get to be good at it, and when you're good at it, you're better than everyone else, and the same person's probably going to keep winning. The rubber banding effect in Mario Kart 8, which presents itself in multiple ways. There's the fact that you are driving slightly faster if you're further towards the back of the pack. There's the fact that you have different items if you're at the back of the pack compared to the front of the pack. There's the fact that you are naturally the target if you are further ahead. So even though if you're in second, you might not be getting blue shelled, well, that person behind you, they got a decent chance of getting reds and greens. So you find yourself all throughout the game being pushed roughly into the middle of the pack, giving everyone a chance to win. And yeah, the people who are better at Mario Kart are probably going to win more races, but you do get that one game where your mum wins. And that's much more fun than them always finishing 12th. So I think, yeah, the ultimate party game for a combination of presentation, general accessibility, that rubber banding effect, and just the sense of joy that it brings, a Mario Kart 8.
One of the best stories I heard about Mario Kart when they were making that game is they were, making games. They were making games for the party pack thing. And I can't remember who it was, but the design producer took everybody to a theme park. He just said, let's go ride the rides. Let's go ride the rides we're trying to make. And they spent an entire day or two doing that. And they did the go-karts. And I don't think go-karts were part of it at the time. But when they did the go-karts, they loved it so much. They did it over and over and over again. They got the thrill of it, the feeling of it. That's what they try to capture, the spirit of that feeling. And that's a big part of why it feels the way it feels. Because if it's one thing to design the game, like you could have Pole Racer we had back in the arcade days. Yeah, you're just moving through the thing. But how do you feel when you're doing that? That's what they tried to capture. And that's, I think, really why it worked.
Yeah, I don't know if I agree that Mario Kart is the best party game of all time. But I think as far as racing games go, there are those realistic racing games. I
think the fans of iRacing and the fans of Mario Kart, the Venn diagram, that crossover is very small.
Yeah. So yeah, definitely on the silly party focused side of racing games, hands down, Mario Kart is the clear victor there. There are other games that I would say are better party games, but nothing really comes close in the way that Mario Kart just seems to have that mass appeal. I think when you're discussing gaming and potentially bringing it up to a new audience, people who have not played a lot of games, Mario Kart is one of the best ways to introduce them to gaming because it's very straightforward in what you need to do. There are skills to master to actually get good at the game, but to participate, not that difficult. Yeah. And as you said, the game tends to kind of balance and normalize throughout the course of a race. So even when you are brand new to the game, there could be a series of very silly events that lead to you winning your first race the first time you pick up a controller. Yeah. It's just a game that's designed to kind of showcase that victory isn't the point. It's supposed to just be fun. Yeah. And that makes it accessible for people who are just getting into gaming. And I think we need more games like that, because I think we see a lot of elitism in gaming, and we see a lot of those frustration for people who've been in gaming their entire lives. And they're like, I don't need a tutorial, knock this crap off. And people who are not into gaming yet, or people who might just be opening up to it, will see those attitudes and be like, I don't want, gamers are assholes.
Yeah.
We need the exact opposite of that. We need games like Mario Kart. Hey, gaming's supposed to be fun, and the reason those people are so invested in it is because it's been fun for their entire, and now they don't even know what fun needs to look like. So they are misunderstanding the point, and they want what they want specifically and kind of miss the big picture. And I think Mario Kart is one of those games where it's like, nah, let's just make it fun, and fun for everyone. So yeah, I think it might not be the greatest party game, definitely up there though.
One of the things that I find about it, probably the final thing that I find so beautiful about it, is it's one of those global standards of games which almost everyone will know as well. If you say at a party, let's play Halo, I mean, a lot of gamers are going to know Halo, but there's a whole bunch of people who've never heard of Halo, got no idea what it is, not a clue. Mario Kart, I'm not going to say everyone's going to have heard of it, but an enormous cross-section of people are going to have heard of it, and they've probably played it at some point as well. It's just one of those games which happens to step outside of the gaming zeitgeist and become a part of much, much broader popular culture in the way that you see across every form of media. There's always just that one or two standout films. I don't care if you aren't into cinema. You've heard of Titanic, kind of helped by, the real events. But there's always these. And I think for gaming...
That was real?
Yeah. I was thinking, do I go down the path now of yes, the true story of Leonardo DiCaprio's character? Yes, that was the real bit. One of those games that just steps outside the zeitgeist, becomes known to everyone, and I think represents, and this is a big one, it represents gaming well across the world.
Yeah.
If you want, and you hit this, if you want to bring people into gaming as a hobby or give them a gateway in, you can do a lot worse than Mario Kart.
Yeah. And it has all the unique characters that you know from Nintendo. So there's a...
Yeah, it's colorful and fun.
Mm-hmm.
In the way that I think Smash Brothers not quite as accessible, but it's a very similar idea. There's just all this wonderful, bright and beautiful and stupid cast of characters that you can play with. Mario must have about 40 or so, I would imagine.
That's why Banana loves Kingdom Hearts. So
yeah. But even if you don't like them, that's the thing as well, is they're all just colorful and silly and fun, and they're stupid looking, and none of them are scary looking. They're all just really, really welcoming.
Yeah, because you can play as Bowser now too, right?
He plays Bowser, yeah, but Bowser just looks silly because he's massive and his car's tiny, which is great.
Well, I sometimes me and Banana have some crossover, so we kind of banter off of each other. A lot of times I've noticed over the podcast time period that me and Com sometimes are aligned in the same thought process.
Not deliberately.
But not necessarily. Yeah, we run parallel is I guess what I should say. So I was in the same mindset. I was like, everything I'm doing is a single player RPG. I need to choose something different. There's so many games that I could list. I could list Riven, puzzle game. I could list. There's just a ton I could list. Wukong I really love is a more modern game that top 10 for me. But I'm going to go with Planet Coaster. Planet Coaster as a simulation. Planet Coaster 2 is really good. It's not beloved like all the people who loved the original Planet Coaster, and I get it, because they took a lot of design elements and the way you make things from Planet Zoo, which is a little different. They took that and combined it with Planet Coaster to create Planet Coaster 2. So it's a stronger engine, it's a little bit better, but the design is just off enough that the original purists of Planet Coaster just don't like it. So it's got a lot of like love and hate in the reviews when it comes to Planet Coaster 2. But original Planet Coaster took the spirit of Roller Coaster Tycoon and blew it up. The assets are really, really interesting. There's nothing in it that looks super hyper realistic at all, but it affords you the, now I have about 3,500 hours of Planet Coaster. So I've done a ton of it. But a lot of that was me learning how to play it just to begin with. I don't do really the campaigns. I don't really do a lot of that stuff, the tutorial stuff. I just want to build things. So I was like, what if I do like this? What if I make the physics do this? What if I do that? And that game really lets you push the engine quite a bit. I've seen some creations that would just blow your mind. Once you know kind of how to make just a simple basic thing in Planet Coaster, it's like, how on the earth did they do that? But it's designed to be that type of game, to where it's an open sandbox. Do what you want. You want to create a park, you want to just play it on flat ground, do that. If you want to have some hills where you make a coaster go in and out of or around the hills, and you want to create like a tier system with the gift shops and this and that, you can do all that. You have to kind of create the terrain for it. There's certain limitations and things like that. But at the same time, things are possible and you just have to work with it. So Planet Coaster, the original one, for sure. I do like the 2, but the original Planet Coaster is definitely one of those, like, if you can kind of suffer, and that's what I do use that word intentionally, suffer, learning how to play how to put pieces together and align things, because not everything is really simplistic, but that's because some of the things you make can't be simple, have a certain intricacy to it that allows you to open up your imagination and say, well, if you want to do that, you can, but you also have to understand how some of the rules of the physics within the game work. And once you learn that, it is a time sink. And you can run it in first person. You can just watch to see what they see. It's not well known, but it is something that you can do into the game. And so you can actually kind of like fly at like eye level to see what they see, the whole park. So it's almost like you're going to your own theme park if you design it, the way you want to. But yeah, Planet Coaster.
What feels like what you like about it is what we discussed when we were talking about Metal Gear Solid earlier on, and when we were discussing Larian Games. It's the fact that they have built a world of systems for you to play with. And it's the same sort of thing that the same individual that might gain joy from a game like Kerbal Space Program, I think that's the kind of person for whom Planet Coaster is really designed for, because it's not so much about a contained gaming experience. It's about having access to this sandbox world where you can build the park of your dreams. And you could approach it in all these different directions, like you said, from the first person, just from free cam, wherever it might be. So it's for a very, very specific audience, isn't it? But the audience is designed for, it's very, very well targeted and very well developed.
Yeah, I think Planet Coaster is definitely one of those simulation games, those kind of sandboxy world building games that really does what it set out to do very effectively. I think for me, the game in that category that I resonate with most is probably Minecraft, but Minecraft is more general, and I think Planet Coaster narrows its scope to kind of the idea of this theme park that you're building, and really, really demonstrates just a level of excellence in that narrowed scope. Whereas Minecraft has pieces that I don't enjoy, things that I'm not interested in, parts of the game that I don't really want to invest in. And Planet Coaster doesn't really have that. It's everything is polished, everything feels like it belongs, and it works, and they put the same level of effort and appreciation into building all parts of your theme park and giving you the control to build exactly what you want. So yeah, I completely agree. That's Planet Coaster is definitely a solid one.
Yeah, there's a mine coaster that you can just plop down and just build, of course. And what's interesting about it is that it runs off of this, obviously a rail, but there's a metal portion that connects itself to that rail. So technically you could spiral it. And now you're running upside down, but you're always right side up because you're in the bucket. So if you know that, because of course you could just like run it like normal, but if you do it just right and spiral it, now you can actually create this swinging effect as you're going through the mine, but you're always right side up. So it's kind of like this like Temple of Doom, Indiana Jones type thing. That's just one simple example of what I was talking about. So it's not really obvious to you, but once you start playing with it, it's like, oh, I could do it like this or that. Planet Coaster 2 now, you can add assets to your coasters. That's like I said, I don't know why people hate on it so much, because it's almost the same thing. You're just adding to it, but you can add assets to that same bucket thing I was talking about, and say you want like a flame on it or something. Now you can add that to your actual coaster and it'll ride with you. Pretty neat.
I had to find out what corners the internet Legion's in, because it feels like it's just so hate-driven. Your algorithm, your browser.
Go look at the reviews for Planet Coaster 2.
Corners of the internet.
Fair point.
I think the hateful part is that's the center. You exist in the corners of the internet that the hate hasn't reached.
My world is surprisingly like well balanced and thoughtful. I don't know what I'm going to do to keep this going, but yeah, all these games where occasionally I've heard Legion say, like the controversy about it, etc., etc. I've very rarely ever seen any of it. I'm gonna keep it the way it is. Don't send me any fucking Reddit links. All right?
Yeah.
Don't mess up my algorithm. Tell you what, I'm doing the sign off on this one. But before we do, I just wanted to check: do you have any sort of honorable mentions? Ones that you don't want to go into more than just read the title? Were there anything that would have made your list, but we just didn't have time for? Banana.
Sure. I guess there were two that I would kind of prepared if this were to continue. Vampire Survivors. Absolutely love that game. I think that within that genre of games, the kind of like bullet helly progression, I think is just so satisfying. And then the other one, Mario Party, but I'm not sure which Mario Party.
Right.
Weirdly enough, I think it is one of the more recent ones since the era of the Wii games, Wii U, and now Switch. So one of the jerk-off simulators. I think they're just hilariously fun games that get a group of people into that just have fun kind of mindset that Mario Kart does. And it's silly, and there are new fun games in every instance, and sometimes it's not even competitive. The most recent one I've played, there is a like purely cooperative mode that I found absolutely wonderful. So I think Mario Party games definitely exist somewhere on this list. I'm just not exactly sure where and what the ranking within that category is.
I 100% agree with you that the development of them post Wii and into the Switch era is definitely the golden age of that kind of gaming. Because if these are party games, it just adds to the absurdity, doesn't it? When we do have these Switch controllers, which we sort of think of it as like the double dildo feeling, you know? Yeah. It's just, now it's even, the act is inherently funny. So even the people who aren't really that into what's going on the screen and whatnot, they enjoy the absurdity of the act that's actually taking place in front of them. It's perfect.
And there was a game in that category for that exact reason, and it's just that it was built purely around that you're looking silly while doing it, that it didn't quite make the list, and that's the WarioWare games. The whole point of those games is to do Mario Party games in a way that everybody is watching you look like a jackass. And it is perfect. It executes flawlessly on that goal. It's just, that's such a niche goal that I was like, I can't label this one of my favorite games of all time.
Yeah. All right, Legion, what have you got? Honorable mentions.
I kind of mentioned it before a little bit, but like Ribbon, I think of the puzzle games, for me, Ribbon is always the best one I've ever played. I loved Myst. Myst was great, but Ribbon took it to another level for me. It definitely took the same story and really helped to flesh out that world. And the puzzles were great, and the environment was just amazing. Very, very immersive. And the newest one that I played, I had a lot of fun with that. And also, I'm waiting for you, Never Are. Probably Morrowind. Morrowind's got to be up there. It's just an amazing game, amazing story. Love the story. Colin played it recently on his Twitch stream. Has not done Tribunal, so we're looking forward to that.
Yes, it's one of the better games I've ever played, and we have a slight disagreement there, but it's mostly just in phrasing. I don't think Morrowind has a great story, but it does have a great background narrative. It's the story that doesn't really involve you. I love that. The fact that the world feels like it's like you don't matter that much until the moment finally when you do. And the way that it constantly feels like it's changing, and the way the problem feels bigger than you, and like there's another layer of politics going on. So I agree with you, just in a slightly different phrasing, essentially.
I do like the fact that you become who you are supposed to be versus the Oblivion model or the Skyrim model, where like the opening cinematic, basically you're the chosen one now. Oh, okay. All right.
If only somebody had done a discussion about whether or not it was more compelling for you to be the chosen one or just somebody who steps up. It sounds like such a great topic for a game.
What an episode that could be. And I will say, I believe my character firmly was not prophesied. I think my character forced the fulfillment of the prophecy and was just a normal person. But I do like that the game gives you that essential option. You can interpret it, exactly what happened to your character.
And the only reason why I disagree with you is just a lore-based reason. It has nothing to do with it, and the game throws it out, lets you decide for yourself for sure. But there is some lore there that says, look, there are some gods who have not forgiven this decision. And so, and she said that the person would be reborn, and may or may not be you, but you fulfilled the prophecy either way. I get that. But yeah, Ashara does not forget or forgive.
I believe the joy of that is that this is clearly a world where the gods are not trustworthy. Where, much like the Greek pantheon, the gods are wonderfully human. And I wonder how much Azure in particular reaction would have been like, oh, well, that's a pleasant surprise. I'm glad this worked out. So yeah, that wonderful choice that you have with Morrowind, I think, just makes it so interesting as a game. And again, I've mentioned it before, I wouldn't recommend people play it. It's a very, very difficult game to get into unless you know what you're getting into. But it is very special.
Yeah, don't play, just watch Com's VODs. There you go.
The VODs aren't up.
Don't
watch Legion's imminent playthrough.
On OpenMW, yeah.
I do have a couple of clips though. Mostly involving powerful sexual metaphors. So if you like those, you know where to go.
I got a few of them where you like ran into somebody who's like,
"Sup, girl?
What's up, girl?" And he's like, "Oh, guy. What's up, guy?"
I take on all comers. Stop it. So, for me, honorable mentions, final ones: Marvel Spider-Man, the PlayStation 4 game, which is one of the more joyous gaming experiences I've played in the last few years, and also just something that lived up to the weight of nostalgia. I think it was something that we built this game up in our minds that we wanted, and it actually managed to fulfill that. Worms, and that is not a particular Worms game, but just Worms as a whole. I couldn't pick them out. Honestly, I couldn't even differentiate them in my memory as to which was which. But Worms Armageddon is the one that sticks in the mind the most clearly. And finally, this is the one that actually was unlucky to miss out, was Outer Wilds, which is probably the most perfect puzzle game in the last few years. It was actually quite old now, isn't it? Probably close to a decade old, honestly. But one of the most compelling modern puzzle games. And there we are. So, those were our 6 top 5 games. If there's something we missed out, do feel free to tell us. We'll be more than happy to know. And also, what are yours? Let us know in the comments, because we're always happy to find out. And we're a curious bunch of people. I do want to thank Banana for coming along today. I want to thank Legion for coming along today. And I want to thank me. I'm very proud of myself.
In particular.
This has been the Gamers Advocate podcast. We'd love it if you liked, if you shared, if you subscribed, if you dropped a comment. But the main thing, and the only thing left for us to do, I think, unless I've forgotten something, is to give a little goodbye. So to all of our viewers, bye-bye.